Hi, this is Ofori, the digital reader, and back in April, I reviewed the Boox page, the first Boox page, and I really liked it except for one thing. I just couldn't stand the limitations of e-ink, where they had all these settings where you had to dial each individual app in, whether it was animation, you had to set it one way. If it was for reading, you had to set it another. And it just was a real pain that every single time I went into an app, I had to kind of dial in the right experience. And then when I went into another app, I had to dial that experience in. Now, once you've been to the app and you've kind of fine-tuned the experience, it's a lot easier. But even then, if you're in an app that goes back and forth between animations and reading, then it's still a pain. That was my biggest gripe on the Boox page, is basically the limitations of e-ink when it comes to working with Android apps. So I wanted to know if there was another option out there, maybe something that could have all the benefits of an LCD screen, but be something that was made for reading and reading in long sessions. And what I bumped into was TCL's technology, TCL NXTPaper. Now, TCL created a line of devices made for reading and for writing, and more importantly, reducing eye strain. And they made phones and tablets. And all these phones and tablets use this NXTPaper technology in their line. The key benefits of NXTPaper technology are, first, they say that the screen is closer to natural light the way they use their technology. It has an anti-glare coating, and that anti-glare coating is a matte coating, so that makes it much easier to read in bright lights and causes less reflection on the screen. It emits a lower level of blue light than other LCD tablets. Blue light is supposed to be the light that causes most of your eye strain. I looked at their offerings and I didn't choose their tablets because their tablets, they have an 11-inch and a 12-inch tablet, and I just didn't want something that big. I'm looking for something kind of hand-holdable for e-reading. They have a 10-inch tablet, but the 10-inch tablet is only through Verizon, and I'm not a Verizon user. I use T-Mobile. So I guess I could have got it on eBay or something like that, but even that was 10 inches, which seemed a little bit too big for me. But what I ended up with was their phone, the TCL NXTPaper 5G. So let's go over the specs. First, the design. The dimensions, the weight, 196 grams, has 3 side keys. The color of the phone, it comes in several colors. I got the midnight blue or the moon gray. I'm not 100% sure, but I think it's the midnight blue. And then the finish, basic stuff. As far as the display, it's a 6.8-inch screen. And one thing I should note is TCL has several lines of TCL 50 phones. If you're buying this phone, you want to make sure you're getting the TCL 50 NXTPaper 5G phone, and you want to make sure that the back of the phone has a round camera bump. If you do those, you'll be in good shape with this phone, or just use the link in my description that'll take you to TechN, and it'll show you the type of phone that I purchased. Resolution is 1080 by 2460. It's 396 ppi. Has a refresh of 120 hertz. You can pick the refresh rate. You can pick variable, you can pick 60, or you can pick 120. Brightness is 550 nits. Then they have the display ratio, contrast ratio, glass type, anti-finger mark coating, the color gamut, screen to body ratio, all that's there for you to take a peek at if you want to see that. Has a 5010 milliamp battery, 33 watt fast charging, USB-C type 2 charging. It has the charging time, it has the standby time. Then the performance. It has Android 14, but you can upgrade it to 15 and 16. At least that's what TCL is saying right now. You're going to be able to get security updates until March 2029. It says that the security updates are going to be quarterly. And then it has the security bulletin. The chipset is the MediaTek Dimensity 6300. I should note that this is basically a lower mid-tier phone. So if you're talking about 10 being top of the line, Android, Samsung, and Apple phones, the Pro models, then this is kind of a 6 as far as that's concerned. But once again, this is a $200 phone. As the CPU, it's an octa-core, and the GPU, then for camera, it has a 108 megapixel camera, an 8 megapixel ultra wide, a 2 megapixel macro camera, and an 8 megapixel front camera. The video on all of the cameras is only 1080p, so just be aware at 30 frames per second you will not be getting 4K, but once again, it's a $200 phone. So if you are interested in photo or video, this isn't the phone for you. And then it has the basics as far as the stuff it does with its camera. It has a light, it has a scene detection, it has portrait mode, all that kind of stuff like most phones out nowadays. 8 gigabytes of memory, can go up to 16. Mine is 8, 256 gigabytes of memory. It can go up to 512. And you can put a micro SD card in up to 2 terabytes. Connectivity, Bluetooth, audio jack, and it has NFC. It is dual SIM, which is nice, especially here in the States. We don't get a lot of dual SIM phones. It's 5G. And it also has all the other data bands, as you can see. It has face unlock. It has a side-mounted fingerprint sensor. It has GPS. It has GLONASS. It has all the usual suspects when it comes to sensors. For audio and video, once again, nothing really stands out, just par for the course. So those are the specs. You can pause if you want to kind of take a deep look at them. But for $200, you're probably not buying this because it has top of the line specs. You're buying this because it's going to perform well as a phone and get the job done. And I feel like as a phone, as you'll see when I talk about it a little bit more, I feel it gets the job done as a phone. I wasn't planning on a second phone. I bought this primarily as an e-reader, but I liked it enough that it is my official second phone. And I don't put a SIM card in it. I actually just use it as a Wi-Fi calling phone that uses my Google Voice account. So when I'm home, if somebody calls me or I want to leave somebody kind of a home number, then I will leave my Google Voice number. And that way it's Wi-Fi calling when I'm home or wherever I can get Wi-Fi. And I find I use it for that. Obviously, I'm using it for e-reading. I find that the 108 megapixel camera I like quite a bit. And just for generally having a backup phone, if something happens to my primary phone, it's always nice to have. So I'm going to be talking about a couple subjective things, and there are going to be some subjective things that may or may not show well. And what I mean by that is once I start talking about the screen especially, I'm going to show you pictures and comparisons, but because of how cameras work and how they automatically adjust the light, I'm not sure how well it'll show up the readability or non-readability. So what I'm going to do is, going through this review, I'm going to be rating stuff on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the best rating. And generally, this is what my 1 to 10 rating is going to be. Now, for an example, let's just take readability. I'm going to be talking a bit about readability, and what I'm considering readability in this video is eye strain when reading on a device for several hours. So if we're talking about readability, black and white e-ink reader is a 10, paper is a 9. You might wonder, how does a black and white e-ink reader beat paper? And that's because Not only does the black and white e-ink reader not need light to read it clearly, but with a black and white e-ink reader, you can change the font size, you can change the margins, you can change the spaces between the lines. Those are things you cannot do with a sheet of paper. With a sheet of paper, if the type is tiny, you're just stuck with it. If the type is big, you're just stuck with it. So that's why I rate the black and white e-ink reader above paper. But you can see paper's a 9, a color e-ink reader is 8.5, an LCD tablet reading in dark mode is 6.5, and then just a regular LCD tablet or screen is a 5. As I go through this, I'm going to try to keep my rating in the top left corner so you can see at a glance what my ratings mean. 10 is perfect, 1 is awful, abysmal. So I'm going to get started talking about the phone part of it, and then I'll go ahead into the e-reader part of it. This has a MediaTek Dimensity 6300 chip. Don't really know what that compares to, but I will say, and you'll see, I feel that this phone is definitely snappy enough. I felt no lag. I felt like I generally kept the phone at 60 hertz per second because that's what I'm used to with my iPhone. And I knew it saved a tiny bit of battery life, but you can use the variable refresh rate, which goes from 60 to 120, depending on what you're doing, or you could keep it at 120. So what I'm going to do is just kind of open up a whole bunch of apps, and then you can kind of see for yourself how snappy you feel the phone is. I will start out at 60 hertz, and then I'll switch to 120 hertz, and then you can see how snappy it is at 120. So I mostly have the apps I'm going to be using daily on this device on here, and I'll do some YouTube. Like I said, this is my Wi-Fi phone, so I'm only doing Wi-Fi calling on it. So I have Google Voice, I have my Kindle, I have my Libby, I have Tubi. Sometimes I feel like watching some free TV if I'm stuck someplace, or I don't want to use up my phone's battery. I always like to keep a little Tubi on me. You can see going through this phone, it definitely has a little bit of a snap to it. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to change the refresh rate to variable. Generally, I don't like to keep it at 120 hertz. There's just no real sense to do it. But you'll see now that the phone is going to be a lot quicker as far as opening stuff up. And that shows you that the time it took to open was much more the refresh rate than the power of the chip. And now let's just go ahead and you see how many apps I have open all at once. So that lets you know it's kind of a snappy little device. Just an FYI, I won't really be going into the settings because this uses stock Android and the settings are Android settings. TCL does have a NXTPaper setting in the settings of the phone, but I found it doesn't really do much except up the saturation or lower the saturation. It didn't do anything else. One thing I want to touch on before we move forward is the fingerprint scanner and the Face ID. I found the Face ID, frankly, to be horrible, or using my rating, bad. It was random. I just felt like I never knew when it was going to open, and sometimes it would pop open. Sometimes I'd stare at it and move it around and nothing would happen. I quickly turned that off. Your fingerprint scanner, I would give it a 7. It's good. It's not the fastest, but it's totally serviceable and it works. For me personally, for all my devices, I typically just use passcode. I feel more in control of when I want the device and when I want it to open. The only device that I don't just use my passcode all the time with is my iPhone, because Face ID is just magic. And before I forget, I also wanted to show you what the screen looks like when you're playing media. I talk a lot about the matte screen protector and how it reflects light, but I did want to show you if you're playing a movie or something, you definitely notice it a little bit. The colors are a little bit more muted, but it still looks fine. So next, let's talk about the battery life, and this is the battery life in normal mode. Generally, when I'm testing battery life with LCD tablets, I use my Tubi test. And what I do is I log into Tubi, I pick a series and a show or series, and then I just play it. And with the TCL 50 NXTPaper, I was able to get 7 hours and 45 minutes just playing video nonstop. That's pretty good to me. So for the battery life, I'm also going to give it a 7. 7 hours and 45 minutes is good. It'll totally get you through an average day. It's not great, superb, or perfect. So next we're going to take a quick look at the camera. I'm no camera buff or expert, but it's a phone, so I guess I got to talk about the camera. It has a 8 megapixel wide angle. It has a 8 megapixel front camera. It has a 108 megapixel main camera, and it has a 2 megapixel wide camera. So I'll kind of show you some pictures I took, and you can kind of decide what you feel about those pictures. So this is the selfie cam, the 8 megapixel selfie in low light. And I feel like there's a little bit too much processing for my takes. It's passable, but I would not call this a great image. So I would give this a 5 over a 6. I'm going to give it a 6 because it's not bad. This is the selfie cam in good light, and this is much better, much more natural to me. I would give this one an 8. And this is the 8 megapixel camera in selfie mode. And I have to say, this is pretty good. If you look above my head, you can see that my typical photos are a little bit blurred. And of course, I have my scraggly beard and it seemed to not get lost in there. So this, once again, is very nice. I definitely would give this an 8. Now let's talk about the 2 megapixel macro camera. I'm not even sure why they included a 2 megapixel camera on this phone. You can see it's definitely not sharp. It's fuzzy. As far as the macro camera, I definitely have to give it a 2. As a matter of contrast, this is the same picture taken with the 108 megapixel camera. And now for the 108 megapixel camera. This camera is the camera that you should be using on this phone. This is a picture I took as I was leaving my basement. And this is a picture of my car and my neighborhood. Once again, very nice pictures, sharp, crisp. These are definitely, I would say, an 8 or a 9. I'm going to give it an 8 for the main camera. And this is the 8 megapixel wide angle lens. It's okay. It's definitely passable. I would say I'm not blown away by it, but I would give this probably 7. I'll give it a 7 or a 6. I'll go with a 6 for this. So let's get started with the NXTPaper stuff. So on the NXTPaper devices, they have something they call the NXTPaper Key. So using the NXTPaper button, what you're going to do when you push up the selector is you're going to get 3 choices. You're going to get color paper mode, you're going to get ink paper mode, and you're going to get max ink mode. Color paper mode is nothing. It's basically just less saturated than the regular. It doesn't do anything else other than reduce the saturation of color on the screen. Ink paper mode, once again, I consider it useless. All Android phones nowadays in Android 14 have the ability to reduce the saturation so that's a black and white screen. Doesn't really do anything. And the last and my favorite mode is max ink mode. You'll see, of course, the animation. It's going to change it to max ink mode, and you'll also see it got rid of all of the apps except 8 that you chose. The 4 apps that are automatically installed by Android that you can't get rid of are phone, messages, contacts, and settings. But above that, you'll see the 8 apps that I chose to have in my max ink mode. You'll also see right below the time, it has the new battery life of how much time it has approximately. You'll see when I tap an app, it gives me an option to remove the app. But when I choose to, if I choose to remove the app, then you'll see that it will only give me a certain number of slots that I can use to add it. And you'll see I remove the app and I have 1 slot that I can use to add an app. And if I click that, it gives me a whole bunch of apps, but I only have 1 app I can add to that slot. So I'm going to add YouTube just so you can see, even in max ink mode, how nice the refresh rate is for videos. You can see I'm going to my YouTube, and you can see once I choose a video, it looks great. And once again, I keep my phone at 60 Hertz, but this is 60 Hertz. You can see there's no ghosting, nothing like that. It just looks fine. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get rid of YouTube as one of my 8 apps, and I'm going to add the Kindle app back into my 8 apps, because generally when I'm in max ink mode, that's what I usually run. And those are the 3 NXTPaper modes. And once again, when I click it, it'll go back to regular mode with the nice colors. Also, before we move on to screen comparisons, I want you to just kind of take a look at the matte coating compared to my iPhone as far as reflection. So this is my iPhone, and you can see it's picking up tons of reflection. It's picking up the light, it's picking up my face, it's picking up the room. And now let's go ahead and try the TCL, and you can see with the matte coating, you can't see any of that stuff. It diffuses all of it. So that's pretty nice. I know that I love having a matte coating on my phone, and one of the things that infuriates me about it is I can never get it perfect. I can never get it without any bubbles or dust or anything. So for me, this was almost the price of admission alone to get a matte coating on a phone screen that was perfectly applied. And now for a side-by-side screen comparison with my iPhone 15 Pro Max. I'm using the same brightness, and the app that I'm using is my Pocketbook Reader app. So first, let me pick up the TCL so you can kind of take a look at it. You can see, got to orient it right, and you can kind of see how that light diffuses over it very evenly. No bright spots or anything like that. But you can see it definitely feels like it's leaping off the page. For this, you can see the banding of the light. You can see the reflections. Once again, that brightness just jumps out at you. So it definitely is brighter. I could definitely feel it was much more strained to read on the iPhone in the regular mode. And this is the phones in dark mode. Here you can actually see that the TCL seems a little bit brighter, and the reason it seems a little bit brighter is the matte screen isn't reflecting a lot of light because there isn't a lot of light. So in dark mode, they're pretty identical. The matte screen doesn't really do a whole lot of heavy lifting. So that's it. That's the TCL NXTPaper 5G. As far as me kind of summing up how I feel about it, I feel it is an absolute win because I kind of buried the lead. The phone life using the constant running video mode was 7 hours and 45 minutes. When I used max ink mode for reading, I got 17 and a half hours out of that phone. And that in itself is amazing. But the NXTPaper mode, I won't call it a gimmick, but it is not some night and day change. I feel like the max paper mode pretty much gives you the equivalent of reading in dark mode on an LCD screen. So it is better, but not leaps and bounds. I would say the value, going over how I feel about everything on a scale of 1 to 10, I would say the value is a 9. I got it for $200. I got the NXTPaper technology. I got a perfectly serviceable second phone. And I got that max ink mode that gives me 17 hours of battery life if I want to just use it as an e-reader. And I got a matte screen protector that is perfectly applied to the phone, which I haven't been able to do myself in 10 years to any of the phones I ever got. And you can now get it for less than $200. I just don't feel you can beat that value. For readability, I give it a 7. I feel that it is definitely better than an LCD tablet reading in dark mode, but not by much. It's not in the realm of e-ink at all. So it's better, and once again, for what you're paying for it, that's great, but I would give it a readability of 7. The cameras, it's brought down by the incredibly underwhelming 2 megapixel macro camera, but the 8 megapixel selfie and the 108 megapixel main camera are both good mid-level cameras, and you'd be very happy with those 2 cameras. But the wide angle lens and the macro mode definitely let it down. Battery life, I'm giving the battery life a 7 for the regular mode. 7 hours and 45 minutes is perfectly fine. That'll get you through the day. For the max ink mode, I would give it a 9 because 17 hours is just really good battery life for a $200 phone. I didn't go big into call quality. That's just because it's perfectly fine. I would say the call quality is an 8. It is just like most phones in the mid-tier. It's perfectly fine call quality. I would definitely give the call quality an 8. And remember, this phone has 2 SIM cards. And once again, in America, it's pretty rare to get a phone with 2 SIM cards. The face scanner on the phone is trash, but the fingerprint scanner is perfectly fine. This is a solid recommendation for me because I'm not comparing it to the flagship phones. I'm comparing it to the Big Me High Break. I'm comparing it to the Boox Palma, and both of those phones cost more than this phone. They are much better e-readers, but at every single thing else, they're worse. So it's kind of a trade-off, but I much prefer the trade-off of not having to tweak every single app I go into. I much would rather deal with the trade-off of being able to watch a video every now and then. And once again, the max ink mode doesn't give it the battery life of the Boox Palma or the Big Me High Break, but it's 17 hours. That is more than good enough for me for a device that I consider the ultimate bridge device between my main phone and my main e-reader. This device can just do a little bit of everything. So I've included the links where I got it. The main reason why I'm including that link is because it's a legitimate site. You get it, and I think it took me like a week and a half for it to come, but I got it brand new in a box. It was unlocked. And as I mentioned, because it came from Tekken, which comes from overseas, I got 2 SIM cards. At some point, I may put a SIM card in there. So I will be keeping this device, and I'll probably be getting rid of my Boox Page. I'll probably be holding on to it for a little bit because I am waiting for the next generation of black and white e-readers from Pocketbook to come out. Once they come out, then I probably will be getting rid of the Boox Palma, which was a very nice device. But the main reason I use the Boox Palma now is it's a black and white reader, and I enjoy reading on a black and white e-reader. And also, I've already gone through all the effort to tweak all my settings for the apps that I do use, but I won't be adding any new apps to it because I just don't feel like going through all that again. Where with the TCL NXTPaper, I just download the app and I'm good to go. So this is Ofori, the digital reader, and keep reading. Of course, any questions, send me a comment.